Merchants are the people who trade for useful items in dungeons, and they are dependable allies of adventurers. The story follows Latty, a young adventurer exploring Tartaros, the largest and most mysterious dungeon ever discovered. It appeared 7 years ago, and despite countless attempts, no one has reached its depths. Now Latty dares to challenge it. After navigating through the dungeon, he realizes he has only reached the 3rd floor despite walking for a long time. Unsure of what lies ahead, he shakes off hesitation. Now isn't the time to delay. Maria and the others would only mock him again. For now, he'll return to town, sell materials, and sort through the growing transfer log. As he continues walking, lost in thought, his foot suddenly presses down on a hidden button. A trap activates, and before he can react, he is caught in a handcuff trap, bound tightly and unable to move. Shocked, he wonders how he got caught so easily, as he has been adventuring for 5 minutes and already turned himself into a dungeon decoration. Even with all his strength, he cannot break free. Panic sets in as he realizes this is a lower floor. If no one comes, he might not make it out. Just then, he hears approaching footsteps. He looks up and sees a figure coming closer. Judging from their appearance, he assumes they must be a merchant. Without wasting a moment, he calls out, shouting for help. Desperate, he tells the merchant he wants to purchase a trap release item. The merchant stops, chuckles slightly, and approaches him. As she gets closer, she laughs loudly, calling him an idiot for getting caught in such a basic, low-level trap. With a teasing tone, she greets him, asking if he got lost in this place. Latty sighs internally, realizing he has encountered another troublesome person. For a moment, he wonders if his real class is professional embarrassment rather than adventurer. But then he quickly introduces himself, clarifying that he's an adventurer, not a kid. The merchant studies him for a moment, appearing skeptical. He certainly looks young for the job, and she wonders if he is lying. Latty insists he is telling the truth and presents his adventurer license as proof. She giggles upon seeing it. Finally, she takes out a trap release item and tells him she will give it to him. But there is a catch. Latty is suspicious, and she explains that he has to agree to her condition. He has a sinking feeling that signing this might be worse than selling his soul. At least demons are upfront about their deals. Meanwhile, strange noises come from her bag, making Latty uneasy. She announces that from today onward, he will be Firo Chan's top customer. She presents him with a deal. Latty is taken aback, glancing at her ominous-looking bag. The items inside give off an unsettling aura, resembling illegal cursed objects. He recalls hearing rumors about merchants who damage adventurers by selling them cursed items. These so-called shadow merchants. Did he just call out to a dangerous person? Firo interrupts his thoughts, pressing him for an answer. She remarks that he is clearly weak. After all, if he got caught in a low-level trap, going deeper into the dungeon would be impossible for him. She lectures him on how true strength requires extensive training from job masters and completing difficult quests. However, with her items, his journey could become much easier. She tempts him, emphasizing that her products are far superior to those in regular stores, and encourages him to use them. She persuades him to form a contract with her, insisting that as a boy, he should strive to be strong. A brief silence follows before he declares that he must reach the deepest point of the dungeon, no matter what. He refuses to give up. Finally, he agrees to the contract and asks her to free him. As proof of their agreement, Firo pulls out a scroll. Still teasing him, she insists that he must first say a phrase. Latty, irritated, refuses. Firo smirks, reminding him that if he truly wants the scroll, he has no choice. Begrudgingly, he repeats the humiliating phrase. Hearing it, Firo bursts into laughter, mocking him even further. With an exaggerated sigh, she finally holds up the scroll and dramatically shouts, "Release." But instead of just freeing Latty, every single trap on the floor suddenly activates at once. Both of them freeze in shock as the room erupts with chaotic mechanisms. Latty, stunned, demands to know what is happening. Firo glances at the scroll in her hands and realizes her mistake. It is not a trap release scroll, but a hell trap scroll, which triggers all traps in the vicinity. Latty expected freedom, but instead found himself in a full-scale dungeon apocalypse. Instead of taking responsibility, she immediately starts moving around in a panic. Latty warns her not to make any reckless movements, but it is too late. A leg shackle trap activates under Firo, causing her to fall to the ground. Before she can even recover, more traps trigger, binding her hands, feet, and even her neck in various restraints. Meanwhile, Latty's own trap finally deactivates on its own due to a timeout. Now free, he watches in disbelief as Firo remains completely trapped. Firo calls out to him for help, but Latty, remembering her earlier teasing, demands that she now say the same humiliating words she made him say. Firo stubbornly refuses, instead begging him not to just stand there and help her. She is in such a bad state that she can barely move an inch. Suddenly, a whiplash trap activates, striking her repeatedly on the rear. She cries out in pain, desperately calling for Latty to assist her. He smirks, asking why she is hesitating. She should just say the words, briefly wondering if the dungeon itself is teaching her a lesson about karma. Finally, between sobs, she apologizes, admitting that she made fun of him and that this was all her fault. As the relentless traps continue their work, Latty watches her struggle. He wants to help but cannot ignore how completely useless this merchant is. Seeing her on the verge of tears, he finally decides to intervene. After some effort, he manages to free her. Panting, Firo recovers and mutters that she thought she could outsmart a kid like him, but things certainly did not go as planned. Latty considers her words and realizes that, despite her sobbing, he cannot ignore her true motives. Without hesitation, he asks her how much she wants for the Hell Trap scroll. Firo, shocked, jumps up and asks if he seriously wants to buy it. Latty confirms, explaining that he finds it quite powerful after seeing it in action. Plus, their contract is still in effect. Firo's expression brightens, a hopeful smile spreading across her face. Excitedly, she exclaims that she knew things would turn out this way. With renewed enthusiasm, she starts calling him Shrimpy Latty again, and he realizes that no amount of adventuring will ever free him from this given nickname. She says that these items will be extremely useful to him. She decides that from now on, she will sell all her best items exclusively to him. Latty is left stunned, unsure of how to process this turn of events. With a playful giggle, Firo extends the scroll toward him, teasingly stating that she looks forward to doing business with him. Then she walks ahead confidently. Latty grips the scroll, doubting whether becoming her customer was the right choice. A sinking feeling warns him. He may have just entangled himself with someone truly dangerous. Where will the journey of this short adventurer and the useless merchant lead them next? Later, Latty finds himself trapped in a desperate situation. He faces off against a group of level 2 lizardmen, creatures that should have been weak dungeon monsters. However, despite his best efforts, none of his attacks seem to harm them. The atmosphere grows tense as the monsters charge toward him, and he realizes that escape might be impossible. At this point, even the dungeon walls seemed embarrassed for him. Just as he prepares for the worst, a sudden cracking sound reaches his ears. Looking up, he sees the entire lizardman group ensnared within massive ice boulders. It takes him only a moment to understand that someone has cast an ice spell. Turning around, his eyes land on Mariable, a sorceress wielding a magical staff. Standing at the deepest descent of the 18th floor, she watches Latty with a smirk and amusement in her eyes. Her voice carries effortlessly through the air as she comments that there appears to be one insect left. Speaking to her companion while keeping her gaze on Latty, she mocks him, questioning why he is still confining himself to such a shallow floor when all their other colleagues have already advanced ahead. She wonders aloud if he has failed to venture forth. He momentarily wonders if she carries a pocket thesaurus specifically for insults. But unwilling to let the taunts go unanswered, he counters by pointing out that she herself is still on this floor. In response, Mariable laughs and holds up a guild notice, explaining that she is here on a mission assigned by the guild. She advises him not to lump her in with his low-level self. Before departing, she warns him about a dangerous trap ahead involving the Golem, then leaves without another word. Still processing everything, he hears a soft giggle behind him. When he turns to look, he is met with the sight of a familiar merchant, Firo-chan. She has been watching everything unfold from the corner, and her amusement is evident. She teases him, pointing out that he was overwhelmed by girls his own age. Her words take him by surprise, as if nearly dying wasn't enough. Now his pride was being buried next to his dignity, and he stares at her in confusion. Smiling, she remarks that he finally managed to find her, though she has seen everything that transpired. Impressed yet entertained by his struggle, she wonders aloud if he is blind, considering how many attacks he has missed against the lizardmen. Latty hurriedly tries to excuse himself, but before he can say much, the merchant pulls him into a sudden embrace. She then brushes off the jokes, shifting to a more serious matter. She asks whether he is not eager to try wielding the bronze sword, a weapon supposedly suitable for level 10 adventurers. She asks his level, and embarrassed, Latty hides his face in his scarf, admitting he's only level 1. The merchant bursts into laughter, calling him a whittle baby. His face burns with frustration. Such humiliation is unbearable. He even wonders if he can file an emotional damage report with the Adventurers Guild. His temper flares as he snaps that it's not his choice. He just hasn't defeated a single monster yet. In response, Firo continues her playful ridicule, laughing as she points out that if he is making his way through this dungeon at level 1, it technically makes him an adventurer in some way. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, Latty lowers his head, wishing to disappear from the conversation. He tries to excuse himself and leave, but Firo suddenly closes the distance, firmly grasping both of his hands. Surprised, Latty demands to know what she is doing, but she simply pushes him against the wall. Struggling to break free, he finds himself trapped. Firo smirks, commenting on how full of openings he is. Before he can react, she locks his legs in place, effectively immobilizing him. She taunts him further, asking where all his spirit has gone. If she has been a monster, she claims, he would have been devoured by now. Once again, she mocks his level, making it clear that he is nowhere near strong enough. Latty recalls being told at the shop that his sword is the best weapon, and despite everything, he resolves to keep trying. Meanwhile, Firo reminds him of their contract. They are partners. She retrieves a weapon she has been holding onto just for him, a target-hitting boomerang. Latty hesitates as he takes it in his hands, slightly wary of the weapon's potential. Firo then reveals a crucial detail about the boomerang. It has a targeting effect that will help him find enemy weak points. Hearing this, Latty starts to consider using it seriously. Firo assures him that regardless of his lack of control, she is confident this weapon will help him level up. As he begins contemplating how to throw a boomerang in a straight line, Firo prepares to teach him, only for the situation to take a sudden and dangerous turn. Without warning, a colossal stone golem appears before them. Standing at level 20 with a 5-star danger rank, the monster exudes an overwhelming presence. Recognizing it as the very creature Maria has warned him about, he feels a chill run down his spine. The realization hits him. One attack from this monster could end everything. Trembling, he urges Firo to run. However, she simply hides behind him, accusing him of being the one too scared to act. As the two argue, Firo teases him, reminding him that if he flees now, everyone will mock him. Frustrated, Latty finally throws the boomerang at the monster, only for his attack to miss. Firo wastes no time in laughing at his failure, questioning he has a magic weapon that literally did the aiming for him, and he still managed to miss. Impressive, really. Just as she continues mocking him, the boomerang circles back, narrowly missing her, ripping her top apart in the process. Overcome with embarrassment, she quickly crouches down to cover herself. Undeterred, Latty attempts another throw, but once again he misses, this time striking Firo instead. One by one, her clothes begin to tear from the repeated impact. Finally, she yells at him to stop. When Latty turns to look at her, upon realizing that the boomerang has left her nearly exposed, her expression cycled through all 5 stages of grief in mere seconds. Before he can process the situation, the monster readies an attack. Determined to succeed, Latty carefully calculates his next throw. But just as he is about to launch it, Firo panics, urging him to stop since she has no clothes left. They both watch as the boomerang misses again. Realizing the situation, he abruptly pushes Firo aside, deducing that if the weapon is following him, positioning her in a certain way might lead the boomerang directly toward the monster. His plan works. The boomerang strikes the golem, piercing through it before returning once again to Firo. However, the monster collapses, and a victory announcement confirms Latty's triumph. His level skyrockets from 1 to 8, and he acquires a new item, an emerald core. As the dust settles, Firo fumes, furious that he used her as a decoy. But when she looks at him, she sees his pure joy. He is too thrilled to care about anything else, marveling at how a single attack managed to take down the golem. Excitedly, he pulls Firo into an embrace, thanking her for helping him. A moment later, realizing what he has done, he quickly pulls away flustered. He insists that she is misunderstanding the situation. However, Firo simply leans into him, ignoring his protests. Meanwhile, high above, Maribel observes the entire scene. She has expected many things from Latty, but accidental combat was not one of them. Turning to her companion, she wonders aloud what has gotten into that merchant. Recognition flickers in her eyes as she realizes that the woman he is celebrating with is none other than Firo. In the bustling Adventurers Guild office, Latty's sister, Connie, a dedicated guild receptionist, beams with pride as she congratulates him on his first major victory. Meanwhile, Latty approaches her with an item he wishes to sell. Connie advises him to head toward the market, where Lang manages the jewelry section. She offers to accompany him, knowing he might not be familiar with the route, but Latty, now level 8, insists that he no longer needs such guidance and can manage on his own. Connie watched him go, silently placing bets on how long it would take for him to get lost, but knowing her younger brother's confidence, she felt a surge of joy, believing he defeated a golem and deserved a reward for his achievement. Latty embarks on his journey and eventually arrives in a town near Tartaros. Once a thriving hub for traders, the town is now populated mainly by adventurers. As he walks through the streets, he reflects on his time in the dungeon, thinking that he has been challenging it for quite some time, and now that he has gathered his equipment, he can afford to take things slow. While searching for Lang's shop, his eyes suddenly land on Merchant San, and he instinctively hides. He initially assumed she was just a traveling peddler, but now, seeing her standing in front of a shop, he rethinks his assumption. He contemplates ways to avoid her when his attention is caught by the shopkeeper demanding 6 high potions from the merchant. Latty watches the scene unfold and wonders what kind of work the merchant does. He considers the possibility of failed deals between her and the shopkeeper. But a sudden thought interrupts his musings, making him believe that things may not go as smoothly as they seem. As he continues observing, he notices that the merchant lights up with happiness when the dealer requests the potions. She quickly retrieves them, and Latty notes how her responses differ from those of typical merchants. When the merchant hands over the change, the shopkeeper and others around start laughing, making fun of her for being overly nervous, as her hand has become sweaty from handling the money at this rate. The coins are going to need a towel. Embarrassed, the merchant lowers her gaze and Latty silently observes, realizing that she is genuinely anxious. As she stands there, she reflects on how Firo has treated her kindly before. Just as Latty contemplates approaching her, she suddenly pulls out a high potion and, attempting to present it to the crowd, slips and falls. Embarrassed but determined, she stands back up, questioning why everyone is making such a fuss over a simple high potion. Feeling flustered, she instinctively drinks the potion herself. The onlookers watch in disbelief as she downs the entire bottle, unaware of its effects. It is remarked as a poor financial decision in the eyes of our young adventurer. Moments later, the merchant begins to lose control of her senses. She starts speaking in a drunken stupor, and as the shopkeeper examines the bottle, he realizes that the label indicates it causes confusion. Latty, witnessing the situation unfold, is stunned. He considers stepping in to help as he notices a group of people trying to take advantage of the now drunken merchant. They approach her with ill intent, grabbing her hand as if to lead her away. At that moment, Latty intervenes, activating a hell trap scroll to stop them. The spring-loaded spear trap triggers, and the goons barely blink before the floor betrays them like a bad ex. Seizing the moment, Latty whisks Merchant San to safety. As they run, Firo gradually recognizes Latty and expresses her happiness and confusion about seeing him there. He leads her to the guild office, deep in thought about how the situation turned out. He worries about her well-being and realizes that he does not even know where she lives. Meanwhile, Firo, heavily intoxicated, begins to slur her words, mumbling about how difficult her work has been that day. She rambles about a rude customer who mocked her despite her efforts and questions whether she was truly that bad at her job. Listening to her complaints, Latty considers how she usually interacts with adults in business deals and realizes that her behavior around him might have a different meaning. Just as he is about to say something, he hears the sound of hiccups and sniffles. Turning back, he sees Firo, tears forming in her eyes as she confesses how hard her daily life is. She talks about the many compromises she has to make and how her communication skills are not as good as others. Her own words sink in, and she becomes visibly more depressed. Latty, attempting to console her, reassures her that she is not as bad as she thinks. He tells her that the items she sells are unlike anything he has seen elsewhere, making her unique and valuable. Hearing this, Firo suddenly brightens up and, overwhelmed with gratitude, lunges forward to embrace him tightly. He braced himself, but the force of the hug still sent his soul out of his body for a solid 5 seconds. She then declares that she wants to reward him and, without warning, starts smothering him with affectionate kisses, getting cowed by a merchant's love attacks and treating him as if he were a small child. Latty, caught completely off guard, protests, but Firo refuses to stop. She playfully asks if he dislikes it. While nearby, a guild receptionist walking past notices the scene. Chuckling to herself, she continues on her way, leaving Latty to deal with Firo's overwhelming display of gratitude. He finally arrives at the jewelry store, carrying the emerald he wishes to have made into armor. The store owner examines it and then looks at Latty with skepticism, stating that this kind of commission might not be suitable for someone like him. He further explains that crafting such an item requires an adventurer of at least level 30. Instead, he offers to buy the emerald outright, knowing that Latty has no use for it. He did not expect to leave with the crushing weight of disappointment. He has high expectations for this item, yet it turned out to be another useless thing for him. He briefly considers using the items Firo gave him, but then halts, refusing to depend on that merchant any further. As he walks, lost in thought, he suddenly encounters Firo on the road, startling him. She excitedly tells him that she was waiting for him, having followed his direction. Latty stands in silence, simply staring at her, which prompts Firo to ask if she is so cute that he is left speechless. He panics and quickly denies having such thoughts. She then correctly assumes that he was debating whether to rely on her equipment to enhance his stats. As he considers her words, he realizes that his basic stats are still slow for a level 8 adventurer. He requests to use her equipment to improve his skills. Firo, overjoyed, feels as if she has become a savior to someone in need. With excitement, she asks if he truly wants to rely on her items, claiming she was expecting this outcome. She eagerly opens her bag and pulls out an armor, explaining that it can be equipped at any level. Unlike traditional armor, it is lightweight yet offers high defense, combining hardness and agility. When Latty hears it is the strongest armor, he pauses, intrigued by what kind of armor it could be. However, Firo then pulls out a bikini armor, the world's smallest armor, something rarely even attempted in real life. He, both curious and alarmed, asks if this is some kind of elaborate prank show, and where the rest of it is. She simply states that this is all there is, then praises the armor's defensive capabilities. Latty immediately assumes it is a cursed item since it barely covers anything and would expose most of his body. Firo, however, insists that he try it on, moving closer to encourage him. He would rather fight a dragon unarmed than become the world's first bikini warrior as a male addition. Amused, Firo imagines Latty wearing it and laughs, saying he would look adorable. Without wasting a moment, Latty vanishes like a bullet fired from a gun. But Firo quickly catches him before he can escape and drags him back, saying they will change clothes. She requests that he cooperate. Latty finds himself lying down as Firo sits on top of him, stating that since he cannot do anything on his own, he has no choice but to obey her. Slowly, she begins to put the armor on him. As soon as she opens the armor, a strange power surges out, sending her flying backward onto the ground. When she gets up, she realizes that the armor has somehow attached itself to her body. Her face pales in shock as she did not intend for this to happen. Latty wasn't sure what cursed him more, the armor or the sheer secondhand embarrassment radiating from Firo. Desperately, she yanked, twisted, and even threatened it, but the armor was more loyal than a lifelong friendship. Latty, in a low voice, states the obvious: this is clearly a cursed item. Firo stands frozen in embarrassment. Latty then explains that the only way to remove the curse is to go to a church. There, they can break the curse and free her from the armor. He informs her that on the next floor there is a crystal that will transport them to the city, allowing them to resolve the issue. Without waiting, he begins running toward the destination. Firo, realizing she needs help, reaches out and grabs him, pleading for assistance. Latty relents and takes the lead while Firo follows closely behind. She warns him not to turn around, and he begins thinking about the upcoming challenges. He recalls that floor 8 will have the large crystal needed for transportation. Every 4 floors, such a crystal appears, allowing adventurers to warp to other locations. As they proceed, they reach the first rest stop on floor 8. The area is bustling with adventurers engaged in conversations. Latty and Firo quickly hide, trying to avoid drawing attention. They attempt to slip past the area unnoticed, but soon, eyes begin to turn toward them. Latty reassures Firo that they only need to endure this until they reach the crystal. However, Firo's face flushes with embarrassment as more people start staring and whispering about her appearance. She has faced dangerous dungeons, terrifying monsters, and bad Yelp reviews, but nothing compared to the horror of public humiliation. The murmurs continue, and Firo's anxiety reaches its peak. She grabs Latty's neck, panicking, and begs him to hurry up and get them out of there. Latty, annoyed, tells her that she is sticking too close, making it hard for him to move. But Firo is too overwhelmed to care. She just wants to escape the stairs. She suddenly shouts that she cannot take it anymore. Even the local wildlife is judging them now, as a dog standing nearby begins barking at them. They slowly back away, trying to avoid drawing even more attention. Unfortunately, their feet slip and they fall. Before they can react, a dog owner arrives, apologizing and picking up the barking dog. Luggy and Philo lie there, reflecting on how, even if they one day become legendary adventurers, they would still never want to return to this floor. The dog owner approaches and asks Lavi if he is also a beast tamer, remarking that such a title on the 8th floor is quite rare. Lady's journey takes him past the city of Polta. As he moves through the bustling streets, Philo spots him from a distance. A playful smile appears on her face as she watches him enter a building. Without hesitation, she follows with the silent precision of an elite assassin. Inside, Lady is greeted by the enthusiastic voice of Connie, who throws her arms around him, pulling him into a tight embrace. She tells him that she will do her best for him. Caught between her arms, he struggles to breathe and hesitates, glancing around uncomfortably. His spine filed an official complaint, but she ignored it. She is overcome with joy, but to Philo, the sight is unexpected, something she doesn't fully understand. As she watches the embrace, suspicion creeps in. Is she being scammed emotionally or financially? Without dwelling on it further, Latty enters the next dungeon floor. As he proceeds, a treasure chest appears before him. He approaches it with the confidence of a master thief and the actual skill of someone who has just watched a tutorial once. A few tense moments pass before he hears a click, only for his confidence to shatter as a warning flash before him. His attempt has failed, and in its place, the hoarder's trap activates. Realizing the danger, Latty immediately jumps away from the chest, deeply regretting every fantasy he has about being a legendary rogue, glancing at his limited number of remaining lockpicks. His mind races for a solution, but before he can act, he turns to see Philo standing nearby. She watches him silently, an unreadable expression on her face. His thoughts begin to spiral, convinced that she will mock him, belittle his efforts, and remind him that he is good for nothing but playing the fool. Yet she does nothing of the sort. Instead, she walks in full dramatic heroine mode and asks what is wrong. Placing both hands firmly on his shoulders, she shakes him slightly, demanding an answer. Then, with frustration clear in her voice, she questions how he, as her partner, could even think of betraying her. Lady finds her words strange. She begins to shout, insisting that if he has a problem, he should have asked her instead of resorting to deception. He quickly explains that this is a weapon delivery quest and that he actually needs her help. The moment the words leave his mouth, her expression softens into a hopeful smile. Without hesitation, she reaches into her bag and pulls out a pair of revealing glasses. With these, she claims, he will be able to see through anything. Handing them to him, she watches as he slides them onto his face. At first, they seem ordinary, and he wonders what real benefit they could offer. But the moment his gaze falls upon the treasure chest, his eyes widen in shock. Every intricate locking mechanism inside the chest is now visible to him. With newfound determination, he steps forward and attempts to unlock it once more. This time, the chest opens with ease, revealing its contents. Among them is a weapon, the flame dagger. Lady stares at it, frozen in disbelief, holding the weapon like a child receiving their first legendary toy, while Philo stands nearby with her arms crossed, a proud smirk on her face. She reminds him that she is no ordinary merchant, and now he has witnessed her abilities firsthand. She turns to him, expecting praise, and he does not disappoint. He exclaims that what just happened was incredible. With genuine excitement, he tells her that the item she provided is extraordinary, and while all of her items are impressive, this one is something special. His admiration causes her to blush deeply, her face turning redder by the second. Latty soon realizes that by focusing carefully, he can even see through the interior of the dungeon itself. Overjoyed, he turns to Philo and praises her, calling her a great merchant and exclaiming that with these glasses, they won't even need to map the dungeon anymore. It is every dungeon crawler's dream. However, as he turns back to her, his voice suddenly catches in his throat. His soul briefly left his body and wrote a resignation letter. His face turns pale and panic overtakes him. Meanwhile, Philo remains oblivious, still basking in the joy of his praise. Realizing the issue, Latty tries to look away. But there is a problem. The glasses will not come off. A dreadful realization strikes him as he understands that these glasses, too, are cursed. Philo, noticing his odd behavior, steps closer, demanding to know why he has stopped talking. Grabbing his face, she forces him to look at her and asks once more if he thinks she is amazing. With no choice, he stammers out that she is, indeed, fantastic. Then, in a swift motion, she reaches up and effortlessly removes the glasses from his face. She explains that only the person who puts them can remove them, and without hesitation, she places them onto her own face. The moment she does, her expression shifts. Her eyes widen, realization sets in, and she immediately yanks the glasses off, throwing them as far away as possible. A loud scream escapes her lips. The scream that followed could have awakened sleeping dragons in distant kingdoms. Latty, startled, asks why she reacted that way. With a mixture of horror and fury, she demands to know if he saw her. Latty tries to brush the topic aside, insisting that they forget about it, but Firo is not willing to let it go. Before they can argue further, an unsettling noise reaches their ears. They turn, their breath hitching as they find themselves surrounded. Standing behind them, waiting with anticipation, is a group of orcs. Realization dawns upon them. There is no escape. They are trapped. Latty and Firo find themselves in a frantic chase, running as fast as they can while blaming each other for the situation. At this rate, he develop a new class as professional screamer. Behind them, the group of orcs pursues relentlessly. Among these orcs is their leader, a level 22 orc lord, flanked by 2 heavily armed subordinates. The trio of monstrous creatures is determined to hunt them down and put an end to their escape. Latty is visibly more distressed than Firo, practically whining for help as he pleads with her to do something. She's quick to act, spots a potential hiding place up ahead. Without hesitation, she grabs Latty and pulls him into hiding, pressing themselves against the hidden space. It's less of a strategic retreat and more of a kidnapping. Moments later, the orcs reach the spot where they last saw their prey. They scan the area but find nothing out of the ordinary, only a few scattered jars and wooden boxes. Confused, they stomp around, sniffing the air, searching for any sign of the missing humans. Meanwhile, Latty and Firo remain hidden inside a large confinement jar, a fine antique once used to preserve vegetables, now preserving 2 idiots on the brink of disaster. Latty silently thanks his luck for their narrow escape, while Firo, proud of her quick thinking, considers it a great display of her self-defense skills. She confidently assures Latty that they won't need to use any special items to escape because, in her opinion, orcs aren't particularly smart. Given a little time, she believes they will eventually give up and leave. As they sit in their cramped hiding spot, Firo suddenly asks a question, one that catches Latty off guard. She wants to know who he thinks is better, her or the guild receptionist. This is the worst possible time for a romantic survey, but Firo thrived on terrible timing. The close quarters force them even closer, their bodies practically pressed against one another. Latty, already on edge, feels himself instinctively leaning into Firo, and she notices. A mischievous thought crosses her mind, and she teasingly asks how he could possibly be so excited even in such a dangerous situation. Latty immediately tries to explain himself, denying any such thing, but Firo isn't convinced. She points out that he is breathing heavily, which only makes him look more excited in her eyes. With a playful smile, she suddenly hugs him, whispering that he doesn't need to worry, because, in truth, she knows he is happy to be in her embrace. She continues teasing him, keeping up the conversation in a flirtatious manner, while Latty remains frozen in nervous panic. Just then, disaster strikes. One of the orcs unintentionally bumps into the jar they are hiding in. It wobbles dangerously before tipping over, falling directly onto the orc's foot. For a moment, the entire dungeon paused to appreciate the majestic scream of a very unhappy orc. Inside the jar, the impact causes Firo to lose her balance, and she ends up collapsing right on top of Latty. She suddenly feels something pressing against her. Curious, she glances down and notices the object in question. It's the flame dagger still tucked into Latty's pants. Her teasing nature takes over, and she grins mischievously, making a suggestive comment that this dagger is far too dangerous for someone at his level and should be properly stored in a bag. As Firo reaches for the flame dagger, an odd sensation overtakes her, making her panic. Before she can react, an orc outside unknowingly rolls their hiding jar. The jar rolls faster, eventually smashing against a wall, and they land in an awkward position. They tumble out, dazed and embarrassed. Latty, unable to meet Firo's gaze, mutters about leaving behind his sword and her bag, but retrieving them seems too risky. Both avoid looking at each other, still flustered. Latty assumes Firo is upset, though she feels he did nothing wrong, then dismisses it. To her, he is just a boy. Upstairs, his sister watches with amusement, teasing that they look like they're having a fun party and suggesting she should join. At that moment, it feels as if the final boss has arrived. Latty struggles to complete the fetch quest for the truffle, realizing the mushrooms he has been collecting are not the right ones but enough to open a side business. Just as frustration sets in, Firo hands him a wild boar mask, explaining that it helps locate rare mushrooms. However, he has expected a helpful item, not a fashion disaster. After putting on the mask, Firo playfully remarks that he looks good. Suddenly, Latty catches an unfamiliar scent and starts sniffing the air. Firo watches in confusion as he follows the trail, leading him straight to the rare mushroom. Stunned, he can't believe he actually found it. Excited, Firo rushes over and asks if he is impressed by her item. Latty admits that it worked and Firo teases him. When Latty demands it back, Firo challenges him to say exactly what he meant. The two begin tugging at the mushroom, and in the struggle it is less of a noble quest and more of a really petty food fight, and it suddenly swells. A moment later, a sticky liquid bursts out, landing directly on Firo's face. In that moment, she learned what it feels like to lose a fight against a fungus. They barely escape the orc's trap, only to face another obstacle. As they step outside, Connie suddenly blocks their path. Startled, Levy asks why she's there. She responds sharply, reminding him of her early shift at the guild. Here Lady is not ready for the family drama ambushing him mid-dungeon. She reveals that she secretly followed him and is pleased to finally meet his companion. Without hesitation, she moves toward the merchant, who watches her with an expression that suggests some unspoken debt remains between them. Observing Firo can sense that this lady is the final boss of overprotectiveness, Latty's sister feels justified in having followed them. She believes she must now keep a close watch on the two, convinced that Firo is a manipulative merchant using seductive techniques to control Latty. The very thought fills Firo with irritation. Storming up to Latty, she demands to know what his relationship with this woman is. Latty, turning ghostly pale, looks as if he has been asked the one question he desperately wanted to avoid. He hesitates, mumbling that he has something to explain. He imagines revealing the truth and her reaction but decides against it. Firo, taken aback, realizes there was a secret she never knew. Suspicious, Connie wonders why he hid his sister's identity, assuming it was to avoid the merchant's harassment. Latty, looking regretful, turns to the merchant San and speaks in a resigned tone. Before he can continue, his sister grabs him, declaring that she will take care of him from now on. Without giving him a choice, she starts leading him away, leaving Firo standing there in shock. To anyone watching, it looked less like a sibling reunion and more like a kidnapping in broad daylight. As they walk away, Firo calls after them, reminding them that Levy has left his weapon behind and should retrieve it. But they do not stop. Determined not to be left behind, Firo hurries after them. Their chase leads them deep into Dungeon Floor 6, where they suddenly encounter a hell plant, a level 1-star danger threat. The creature launches a potion attack, causing Latty's arm to burn. Firo, watching the scene, pretends she cannot help yet. Meanwhile, Connie, still holding on to him, activates the Staff of Charity, instantly restoring his HP. She chants softly, "Pain, pain, go away," before pulling Latty into an embrace. Latty, clearly uncomfortable, tells her there is no need for this, but she refuses to listen. Firo, standing nearby, fumes with anger at the sight. Her hands tremble with frustration as she exclaims how disgraceful it is for a grown woman to press a young boy against herself. Outraged, she shouts at Connie, demanding she feel shame for her actions. Connie remains unfazed and responds in a teasing manner, questioning whether Firo is unwilling to admit defeat. She suggests that, as a merchant, Firo might try to pull out a useful item. Then, seeing Firo empty-handed, she mockingly remarks that it seems impossible. Firo, regaining her confidence, refuses to back down. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out the Seed of Evolution, an item that enhances everything it touches. She threw it with the confidence of a hero delivering the final blow and missed with the accuracy of a blindfolded toddler and instead lands straight into the mouth of the hell plant. The plant slowly begins to evolve, its power increasing by 70%. In moments, it transforms into a Neo plant, now at level 49, with a terrifying danger rating of 7 stars. The plant, who has just been minding its own business, was now experiencing an accidental villain origin story. Realizing the severity of the situation, Latty and Firo turn their panic toward Merchant San, only to discover that she is nowhere to be found. The hell plant completely overpowers Firo, trapping her tightly with its tentacle-like vines. Its slimy, slippery surface leaves strange marks on her body as it wraps around her limbs, restricting her movements. Firo grimaced, not just from the slime, but from the tragic loss of her dry clean-only outfit. One of its slick appendages forces its way into her mouth, making it even harder for her to struggle. The once small plant has now grown into a towering monster, and down below, Latty and his sister are momentarily frozen in shock, unable to process what is happening. Latty's sister sees this as the perfect opportunity to escape from the troublesome merchant. She urges Latty to leave with her, thinking he must be too terrified to face the monster. But Latty remains rooted in place. Believing that he has always struggled against slime-based creatures, she assumes he is paralyzed with fear. She approaches him, gently embracing him in an attempt to calm him down. His sister barely blinked before Latty pulled a classic main character vanishing act mid-hug. She quickly turns her gaze and sees Latty charging straight toward the monstrous plant, his expression burning with fury. Alarmed, she calls after him, telling him to come back, but he pays no attention. Instead, he swiftly reaches into his bag, pulling out the target-hitting boomerang Firo has given him. Without hesitation, he hurls it directly at the hell plant. The weapon slices clean through one of the plant's right tentacles, severing it entirely. A deafening roar echoes through the air as the creature recoils from the attack. At the same moment, the merchant drops to the ground. Latty rushes over to her and finds her crying. Between sobs, she reveals that the monster has done more than just strip her clothes. It has also subjected her to other humiliations. Seeing her distress, Latty attempts to console her, explaining that in such a situation, she has no way to fight back. Still recovering, Latty turns to Firo and questions her about throwing the seed of evolution earlier. Firo explains that she has not realized how powerful it truly was. Nearby, his sister, who has been silently observing, turns her attention to Firo and coldly tells her to stop using Latty for her experiments. As she watches Latty's actions closely, she cannot help but analyze the situation. Not only did he manage to save the merchant, but with a single attack, he also severed one of the monster's limbs. She becomes increasingly curious, wondering if Firo has intentionally enhanced the enemy's strength to allow Latty to gain experience more efficiently. The thought lingers in her mind, filling her with growing suspicion. Reflecting on her past memories with Latty, she tells herself that all she ever wanted was to protect him. Her gaze then darkens as she turns toward the merchant, silently commanding Latty not to show such a concerned expression to anyone but her. Meanwhile, Firo, brimming with excitement, informs Latty that thanks to his efforts in saving her, his level has increased. She declares that this was expected, considering how competent she is, but her constant talking begins to irritate Latty's sister. Without warning, she dashes forward, launching a furious attack at Firo. Caught off guard, Firo's eyes widen in shock. Latty's sister repeatedly screams for her to shut up, her rage spilling over uncontrollably. With immense force, she slams the ground, her attacks shaking the area. She yells in frustration, claiming that she understands Latty better than anyone else. As a level 62 fighter, her sheer strength is enough to strike fear even in Latty and the merchant. Her attacks continue, each one accompanied by another declaration that she knows Latty best, that she is superior. Her fists hit the ground so hard, the dungeon considered filing a workplace hazard complaint. Her rage does not subside, and she relentlessly pounds the ground while speaking about Latty, growing more and more aggressive. She stormed off, launching a dramatic one-liner so cryptic, even the subtitles gave up. Then suddenly, she stops. It is as if she has just walked out of a brutal battle, exhausted from her own outburst. The battlefield falls silent. Latty is lying on the ground, catching his breath, while Firo hides behind him, still shaken. His sister stands before them, staring at them both, her expression unreadable. Latty slowly looks up, and in that moment, he notices something unexpected. Her eyes, usually filled with confidence, are now misty with faint tears. She speaks at last, declaring that next time she will not lose. She claims that she knows Latty better than anyone, and she also knows how much worse he truly is. Without another word, she suddenly turns and runs off, her voice ringing out as she accuses Latty of cheating on her. He instinctively moves to stop her, calling after her, but she does not turn back. As he watches her leave, Firo, still trying to process everything, questions what has made her so angry. In his distraction, Latty accidentally refers to his sister as Ni-chan aloud. Firo freezes, processing the revelation like a merchant who just got out-haggled for the first time. Meanwhile, his sister, running further into the distance, harbors a longing deep within her. She wants Latty to return to her side. Ever since he has come back, she has felt as if something inside her is missing. After meeting Latty's sister, the group now finds themselves heading straight back into danger. They must return to retrieve their gear, which they left behind in the midst of the previous battle. However, the task is far from easy. The area is still teeming with orcs, patrolling and searching for any remaining intruders. Latty, ever cautious, suggests that they should wait for the orcs to leave before making a move. But Firo, on the other hand, has a completely different plan in mind. She insists that if they do not pass through now, they will never be able to reclaim their equipment. She then informs Latty that after leveling up, he has grown from level 8 to level 12. Given his newfound strength, he should now be able to take on 2 orcs at once. Despite her confidence, Latty appears hesitant. Sensing his reluctance, Firo suddenly reaches into his clothes, rummaging through them without warning. Latty panics as Firo digs through his clothes like a treasure hunter on a time limit, and she comes across his guild license. She examines it closely, and there it is, his name, Latty Foster, now officially registered as a level 12 adventurer. The card also details his updated stats and abilities. Overjoyed, Firo's face lights up as she pulls Latty into a tight embrace, pressing him against her. She tells him that his body should remember this feeling, reinforcing the idea that even in the dumbest situations, he can always depend on her. His face is so red, an orc could probably mistake him for a freshly roasted adventurer. Flustered, he pulls away from her grasp and firmly states that from now on he should focus on properly growing stronger. Amid this conversation, the merchant unexpectedly speaks up. She expresses her desire to accompany them, particularly this time, making it clear that she has no intention of being left behind. Firo, ever prepared, pulls out an item from her belongings, an invisicloak. She explains that this cloak allows its user to become completely transparent, making them invisible to the naked eye. Confidently, she declares that she is ready to retrieve their lost belongings. Latty does not notice any immediate changes when she puts on the cloak, but as she fully activates its effect, she disappears so seamlessly that Latty questions if she just scammed him and ran off. Moving silently, she sneaks past the patrolling orcs, making her way toward the spot where they have left their gear. Once she arrives, she scans the area and quickly spots her bag lying where she left it. A wave of nostalgia washes over her as she realizes just how much she missed having it with her. Carefully, she retrieves her bag, ensuring not to alert any of the orcs, and makes her way back to Latty undetected. Reappearing beside him, she triumphantly announces that the mission is complete. However, a mischievous idea suddenly sparks in her mind. Moving swiftly, she sneaks behind Latty, wraps her arms around his waist, and playfully tickles him. Caught off guard, Latty stiffens in surprise, momentarily taken aback by her sudden action. After a brief pause, Firo eagerly asks how he found the surprise. For a moment, he remains completely silent, standing still as if lost in thought. Seeing his uncharacteristic reaction, Firo tilts her head in confusion. Something seems off. Concerned, she gently pats his shoulder and hesitantly asks if he is angry. But he remains preoccupied, talking to himself instead. He wonders aloud whether Merchant San is truly safe, his voice carrying a hint of worry. Hearing this, Firo's mind suddenly fills with a flood of questions. Merchant San's face turns so pale, even ghosts would tell her to get some sun, knowing the cloak she is wearing gradually makes the user more and more transparent. At level 2, it starts affecting the transparency of existence itself, but the real problem arises when she discovers that, at level 3, unequipping the cloak becomes impossible. Panic grips her as she understands that she is now trapped, completely invisible to Latty, and even worse, she cannot grab hold of the cloak to remove it herself. The realization sends her into full distress. It feels as if she is fading away like a ghost, and the fear of completely disappearing overwhelms her. In her desperation, she lunges at Latty, grabbing him and shouting frantically for him to take off the cloak before she vanishes completely. However, Latty seems utterly unaffected by her pleas, showing no reaction at all. Growing even more panicked, she resorts to desperate measures. But to her horror, he still does not see her. Her existence remains completely transparent to him. Seeing this, the merchant becomes even more distressed, her condition worsening as she begins to cry. Latty reaches out and pats her head and presses on her ears, massaging them lightly. The merchant meanwhile sinks to the ground, seemingly overwhelmed by what she is witnessing. Despite her distress, she does not immediately resist. After a moment, she gathers herself and tells Latty to stop. Without warning, Latty grabs hold of the cloak from Firo's head and pulls it off in one swift motion. As soon as he does, Firo's body becomes visible again. She stares at him in shock before quickly asking if he has been aware of her presence all along. Latty pauses for a moment before answering. He explains that when she disappeared, he suspected she was still nearby. He knew Firo well enough to guess that she would try to tickle him or pull some prank, which gave away her position. He also points out that he could tell the merchant was not foolish enough to act as strangely as Firo has been. Hearing his words, Firo becomes overwhelmed with emotion. She throws her arms around him, hugging him tightly. Her voice trembles as she admits that the experience was incredibly scary. Tears well up in her eyes as she begins crying loudly, her sobs echoing in the area. But her outburst proves to be a mistake. In a tragic plot twist, Firo's emotional breakdown turns into an accidental orc summoning ritual. The orcs immediately begin pursuing them once more. Afterward, Latty enters the equipment shop, bringing a flame dagger to sell. The transaction goes smoothly, and he receives a good price for it. However, the shopkeeper also offers him something unexpected, a special quest. This quest, the shopkeeper explains, is meant for intermediate adventurers, but considering Latty's past performances, it seems like he is capable of handling it. Lang mentions that Latty has been observed performing exceptionally well, even suggesting that he might be able to reach the 10th floor. Curious, he asks if Latty has accepted the quest yet. He then goes on to explain the true nature of Tartaros, calling it the most difficult dungeon on the entire continent. Because of this, the guild enforces 2 levels of entry restrictions. Naturally, he says, the first checkpoint restriction is the weaker one. As the shopkeeper speaks, thoughts of Latty's sister flash through his mind, recalling her words about struggling to convince the guild to accept something like this. But before he can dwell on it further, the shopkeeper addresses him again, offering to grant the quest for him if he is still undecided. Latty hesitates but then responds that if it is truly possible, he will go along with it. With that, he walks out of the shop, his footsteps tapping against the floor as he leaves. However, just as he steps out, he overhears a conversation behind him. A man standing near Lang questions whether the quest is too much for someone like Latty. The special quest is typically assigned to adventurers level 20 and above, as it involves defeating a Kraken, a monster with a 7-star danger rating. Lang mentions that even the renowned Lapin party failed to defeat it. Given the upcoming difficulties, the 10th or even the 20th floor would not make much difference for Latty. The shopkeeper seems to believe that Latty will likely give up. Hearing these words, he stops just outside the shop, frozen in shock. He pulls up his muffler, covering part of his face, and sinks into deep thought. Meanwhile, outside on the streets, Firo is enjoying the scenery while searching for Latty. Her cheerful gaze moves around until she finally spots him. Excitedly, she rushes toward him, sneaking up from behind and grabbing him while playfully calling out, guessing who she might be. She throws out a heroic pose so grand that even the birds pause to reconsider their flight path. However, Latty's face remains blank, his usual expression looking smaller and more serious than usual. Noticing this, Firo steps closer, curiously asking why he seems so serious today. He dismisses her concern, stating that nothing is wrong. But Firo knows better. Something is bothering him. When he tells her that she does not need to involve herself in his problems, she dramatically pretends to be shocked before rummaging through her bag behind him. As Latty starts to walk away, still deep in thought, Firo suddenly presses something onto his chest. A small flower is now attached to him, and before he can react, he is officially promoted from adventurer to unwilling confession speaker. Firo demands an explanation for what is troubling him. As soon as she asks the question, the flower emits a voice, repeating the very thoughts in Latty's heart. It reveals that he heard everything those men said about him at Lang's shop, and that he is deeply hurt by their words. It also states the undeniable fact that Latty is the least talented member of his family. Upon hearing this, Firo immediately grabs Latty and shakes him, demanding to know if this is true. Meanwhile, he is left in shock, wondering how his deepest thoughts are being spoken aloud. Firo then reveals the truth. This is a broadcast flower, a rare item that makes its user honest and unable to hide their thoughts. Realizing this, Latty desperately tries to pull it off, but no matter how hard he tugs, it will not come off. Seeing his struggle, Firo seizes the opportunity and suggests that this is the perfect moment for a special talk. Thinking of what to ask, she smirks mischievously before leaning in and asking what he thinks about her as a merchant. More importantly, she asks if he likes her. The flower immediately responds, declaring her as super childish. Hearing this, she doesn't just freeze, she loads up like a cat about to pounce on a very guilty-looking dog. Latty insists that it was the flower that spoke those words, not him, but Firo, now more intrigued, starts pressing for more answers. She bombards him with questions about herself, and once again the flower speaks, revealing more of Latty's inner thoughts. It states that he finds her body very mature, and that when she presses herself against him, he feels weird, so he would like her to stop doing that. Her expression shifts into that of a scientist who just found a new species of flustered Latty.